Hello, in today's video I will be mimicking my fellow crewmates. Essentially anything that they say I will do my best to replicate in my own way. Here Gina is getting the engineers to step forward. Now that they have, I can't do that myself, but what I can do is get the doctors to step forward. And here I'm actually the guard duty, so I will go ahead and reveal my own role. And Comet is doubting SQ, but because this is the last round of the day, I won't be able to copy them. And now here's a perfect opportunity to copy once more, because this round is only 2 turns, and so I'll simply just copy whatever the first turn was. In this case it was doubting Setsu, so my guess is that Setsu is going off to code sleep. I even voted for Otome because I didn't actually think Setsu was Gnosia, but Setsu still ended up asleep. And no one was attacked last night, so we know that either the guardian angel or the bug, or both, are still in action. Yuriko asked for reports. I will do the same. I get the doctors to step up, and this all but guarantees that Setsu is or was human. In fact, it does guarantee that they were human, so that's unfortunate. I will now copy again and doubt Rockio and continue this pattern of copying anything I can. Of course, I can't copy someone's report when I myself am a non-reporting role like guard duty. Wow, and Rockio just gets absolutely wrecked. I don't know what Gina wants from me here, because they're essentially asking me to help her or join her in avoiding going to sleep during said warp, which I don't think is possible, and we warp anyways and Charming is eliminated, so I don't know the result of that. Does that mean we failed and Gina's request is no longer valid, or was she talking about a future circumstance? I'm not sure. Either way, we did warp and presumably slept through that, and nothing outside of Xiaoming disappearing happened. Once again, I will play the role of Copycat. However, I will be skipping ahead to the vote because nothing major is brought up in that discussion. And Otome, finally, on the round I do not vote for them, they get voted out. Now this kind of guarantees that the guardian angel protected one of those 2 knights, because it's very unlikely that the Gnosia attacked the bug twice. It's nice since Otome, who we froze, was investigated by Remnant, an opportunity to say whether or not their report conflicts with either doctor. One byproduct, in a way, about this challenge might be the fact that I can't bring up my own original thoughts, and so I can't do anything really in the meeting except repeat what's already been said, and what's been said may or may not even be what I want to say. and that, of course, is not especially useful. I believe Jonas is evil, of course, because Xiaoming, the other doctor, was human. And now Remnin was taken out, so Shigemichi is likely the enemy as well. Considering that neither Xiaoming and Remnin are the bug, one of them could be the AC follower. However, one of them is definitely the real deal, and so that means the one engineer left, Shigemichi, and the doctor, Jonas, between those two, there can only be, at most, one legit role. I bring that up just to suggest that those two should be the discussion's focus, and yet we started and now ended with Yuriko. And thanks to me, round 2 of that discussion was also on Yuriko, and unfortunately, although I vote for Shigemichi here, Yuriko is voted out, and I'm thinking that we lose, and of course we do. Like, I must assume that Gnosia have some sort of physical advantage over regular humans, because why would Comet risk in a one-on-one situation revealing to me, the human, that they are Gnosia when, in theory, I could overpower them and fight back? Of course, the reasoning would be that Gnosia have some sort of innate physical ability that trumps anything a human can do. I rather find the discrepancy between time allotted per accusation to be amusing, because in Kukushka's case, they are simply staring down their intended target. Meanwhile, I am apparently listing multiple things out that have irked me about said target. Okay, so I'm just wandering into the sleeping area too, and SQ acts like that's a form of trust, that I trust SQ. However, would it not be more reasonable to assume that I did not know that SQ was there and I walked in for some other purpose? I don't understand what SQ was getting at. Like, they're desperate to make reality that I am somehow trusting in her. Once again, it says that I'm pointing out questionable points about Rockio, and yet Comet's accusation was simply that Rockio was fishy, and that's all. Okay, now who am I going to copy? It looks like I'm copying Setsu, going after Rockio. The funny thing is, I actually clicked past my opportunity to speak here, and Yuriko essentially did my role for me. And so that's nice. I'll vote Jonas just because I know that Rockio is going away here, and I figured I'd make it a fair fight. I know I've harped on the doctor in the past, and especially Jonas's investigation methods, and the engineer also has its peculiarities, because Otome is suggesting that they did some research, and I can't imagine what sort of research that was other than whatever it is the engineer actually does, and I can only assume that it's not really research so much as asking Levy to look into the waves, or whatever they call it. Like Remnin, when he claims the role, he mentions waves of some sort emanating from the Gnosia that are detectable, and therefore you can determine whether or not someone is a Gnosia. And others don't seem to talk about the same sort of thing. So again, either the investigation method is the same and they just like to call it something else, or like to describe it in simpler terms, or for some reason their investigation methods are different. This is an interesting point too here. Yurko is saying that they investigated, or rather analyzed, the brain tissue of Remnin. And so there are 3 scenarios that come to mind. A, the code sleep is actually just a death sentence, and therefore analyzing their brain tissue becomes possible because that procedure is now an option upon death. Option 2, code sleep is not a death sentence because it is reversible. However, for whatever reason, that brain tissue process can only be exacted in a cold sleep victim. It's been said before that Gnosia cannot be physically discerned. However, I am to assume that with this brain tissue, they can somehow be differentiated. And I can only assume that this process with the brain tissue can only be conducted on either a cold sleep victim that somehow maintains its opportunity to return to life, or a cold sleep victim who is essentially treated as just a dead person. Okay, Ultimate just did some research, and apparently I'm Gnosia. I don't see why I can't just say I did some research and I'm not Gnosia. So therefore Ultimate is full of crap. They're fishy. I feel like Comet would get on board if I said they were fishy. Anyways, back to before. Jonas's method seems to leave the body in a state of messiness. It makes it sound as if that process leaves the victim broken or mutilated, which makes it reasonable to assume that that is why this process cannot be conducted on a living person, because of course, what's the point of determining whether or not one is Gnosia if you're just gonna kill them? The weird thing about that, of course, is that as long as Jonas is the doctor, you're killing presumably everyone in Code Sleep anyhow. Like, basically, I'd love to know the process of what a doctor or an engineer entails and why they sound so different across different crew members. And if that is the case, how come a universally safe method can't be brought forth when it's clear that different methods already amount to the same result, and presumably of those different methods, one is safe or the safest, and we should only be using that method. I think it's easier to poke holes in the doctor role, because for the engineer it seems more of a passive role where they just get Levy to analyze some waves or what have you, and then they know the answer. But for the doctor, it feels very much more hands-on. For a handful of the crew members, they do describe a process of physically engaging with the body in some way, whether they're analyzing brain tissue or opening them up, making a mess. And so I can only assume that when one fakes the role of doctor, they go to the code sleep area and pretend to mess around with the body. And I don't obviously know just what constitutes determining whether or not someone is Gnosia or human in terms of being the doctor, but if I were a fake doctor, I'd take that opportunity to mess with the body as best I can to throw off the real doctor, or perhaps have the real doctor make a false positive, false negative. You'd think I'd want to save this all for another video and expand on it there, but I have a feeling that if you are still watching this, for one thing, I think that's the most any of my videos has ever been watched. So there's that. The other thing is I have plenty more to say about this role, and I don't mind divulging some of that here. And other than the gameplay, I could be talking about it, yes, but it's mostly me just copying what's been said and voting best I can. Of course, we often lose because what I am repeating is not always what is true. And Yuriko being eliminated here really tripped me up because I thought that they were not the real doctor, because Gina asked the doctor to come forward and no one did, and I, being a copycat, did the same. I asked the doctor to come forward and then Yuriko stepped forward, so I thought Yuriko couldn't be the real doctor. Why wouldn't they have come forward earlier?